You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy Podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jesper Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Jesper.
And I'm Autumn.
This is episode 52 of the AmWritingFantasy Podcast, and since it's the 23rd of December as this episode releases, we decided to do something a little different. It's sort of a Christmas special where we're going to share how to create holidays for your fantasy setting. So I guess we could start out by saying Merry Christmas to everyone, but I have to say that feels a bit weird saying that now that we're recording this in the beginning of December, but I guess technically it is Christmas now, isn't it?
It is for everyone who's listening, or at least very close. And I mean, heck, it's after Yule, so after the solstice and Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and all of those holidays. So we're just in the thick of it now, at least when you're listening to this. For us, it's like unstressful early December as we're recording. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I'm not quite into the Christmas mood yet. I don't know about you.
Well, you have to remember, I just had a 2-foot snowstorm today, so
that's pretty Christmassy.
Yeah, I start beginning to at least look a lot like Christmas here. All the decorations are going up for everyone because we're post the Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S. And now here in the Northeast, we just got dumped with a huge storm that's lasted over 24 hours, and it's still snowing. And I think we're still expecting another foot tonight. So my poor dog is like, you see his ears and the tip of his tail above the snow, and that's it. It's really kind of sad.
Does he like the snow, or is it like he wants to avoid it?
He's a November puppy, and where we got him from, she was a very small breeder, a local place in Maine. And she had something going on in her yard, so she never let the puppies out. So the first time when we brought him home in January, is this little ball of fur that was like, he fit into a shoe. He was so small. The first thing he experienced was Maine snow winter. He loved it. He has this Arctic fox thing going on where he actually rears up and pounces like you see foxes and polar bears do. He's had that as an instinct since he was a puppy. So he'll hear something and there's the snow. He's a Cairn Terrier, so he's Toto in The Wizard of Oz, except he's a little bit bigger and he's a redhead. He's gold. And so if you can imagine this little fuzzy mop-like dog who they're bred, they're not toys, they're not ornamental dogs, they're actually a working dog, one of the oldest breeds in existence, where they're from Scotland, older than Scotties. And they were bred to get vermin, badgers, and foxes out of cairns. Hence, they're called Cairn Terriers. So yes, he has this amazing hunting instinct, and you let him out and he hears things under the snow, and he does his little fox pounce and tries to grab it and kill it because that's what they do. But he loves snow. He will go and roll in it during our travels. As we've been traveling, we were trying so hard to find him snow every month of the year, and we did pretty good. I think August we managed to find some because we're up in Alaska, and there was some still up in the passes. It was kind of a challenge, but we tried to make sure he found snow and got to roll in it and play in it, and he was thrilled.
Nice.
So how was your week? I mean, you're not getting 2 feet of snow, right?
No. There's no snow here. There was a bit of rain today. Well, it was like a slight snowy snowflakes coming down today, but it was more like half rain, so it doesn't count. And we're down to like 2 degrees Celsius, so it's getting cold, and it's getting wintry. So, but speaking of puppies, we spent this past weekend at my brother's and his fiance's place, and they actually have a puppy as well.
Aww.
So our boys, they really liked it. I think it's the puppy is it's not used to people staying over. I think this was the first time that somebody stayed over for a weekend in his lifetime. So actually, the Saturday morning, the puppy was so stressed out that it got sick. So we were throwing up Saturday morning and stuff like from all the attention. And the puppy doesn't have any filters to stop playing, right? So if somebody want to play, just keeps playing, but it's still quite small, so it needs to rest, but it can't figure out how to rest. So
it just falls over and sleeps.
Yeah, well, no, they had to carry it upstairs and put it into a room up there so it could sleep, because as long as it was downstairs with the rest of it, it just wanted to play all the time. So so it got a bit sick, but then it slept for parts of Saturday, and then it felt better again, and then the boys got to play some more with the puppy there, so they really enjoyed that. It was a nice weekend. We enjoy going there, and my brother and his fiance, they're such great hosts. They go out of their way to make sure that you feel welcome every time you're there, so it's really nice.
That sounds wonderful. That definitely sounds like a nice family visit, and hopefully your boys are satisfied with just visiting the puppy and not going to be bothering you for your own little canine companion.
Yeah, they were already telling my wife when we were there. So I think maybe you should start considering getting a puppy. Or actually, the oldest one of our boys actually started out differently. He was trying to be sneaky, so he was asking my wife stuff like, "Don't you think it's cute? Don't you really like it? Wouldn't it be nice if you could pet it every day?" He was trying to.
Yeah, kudos to him. He's pretty good.
Yeah. He was trying to get her to say that she really liked it, because, well, of course she did, but we're not going to get a dog. But he was trying to ease her into saying that she wanted a dog too, but he didn't succeed.
Oh, you guys, you know what he's coming from, huh?
Yeah. So, but it was a very nice weekend. But also, even though it's nice and relaxing and all that, when you're out from your own house, and especially me, the older I get, if I don't sleep in my own bed at night, I get really tired. I have a trouble sleeping if I'm not in my own bed. So this morning, Monday morning here, we're recording this Monday evening, but this morning I was very, very tired when I got up, but I still managed to get all the final stages of the character creation process done for our next fantasy series. So I'm pretty psyched about that.
Yes, I saw that show up in my inbox. I was like, darn it, I got to get to looking at that. I even haven't opened it up yet today, but I will. Maybe tonight after I make dinner and put everything away, I'll take a peek and see what you created, and I can't wait to give you feedback and start working on this a bit more.
Yeah, I also cannot wait to get into the fiction writing again, although I guess we have to say we have quite a lot of bits and pieces to finish up with courses and nonfiction books before we get that far, but it's good to just make some progress in the background on the fiction stuff as well.
Absolutely. I think sometimes the plotting at least keeps it going, which is exciting and makes it still feel connected.
A week on the internet with the AmWritingFantasy Podcast.
So I posted a pretty interesting article on Patreon about writing in a noisy or a silent environment. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that article there, but those on Patreon can, of course, read it. But among other things, it said that most people reach peak performance under moderate noise conditions, like 70 decibels. And that just happens to be roughly the equivalent to the chatter in a typical coffee shop or restaurant on a relatively busy day. So that was a bit interesting, but Sage's comment really made me laugh because he said, well, he cannot write during silence or while listening to music. Instead, he said, the sound of politicians is usually perfect as meaningless background chatter. So I thought that was so awesome.
That is really great. Yes, I don't know if streaming, the U.S. government would really inspire me, but I guess it makes good background babble.
Yeah, meaningless chatter. That was what he called it. I thought that was so great.
And he's from the UK, and it's funny because I enjoy the UK Parliament compared to the US. They slam each other and
they're shouting and all kinds of stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's intense. It's. I did not understand politics until actually I spent a year in England, and it all made sense because it's the size of a US state. But it's a country, and suddenly it's like, oh, this is how it all works. The US is just too big, and don't get riled up or passionate, but oh, yeah, UK, awesome. So I think I'd end up getting caught up in the accents and everything else going on if I was listening to that as my background noise, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I will pass on that one, but I thought it was very funny.
I thought it's very funny. I was really excited actually in the Facebook group that Arthur had posted a question on wanting to find a font that looked like a computer speaking, because you know me in fonts.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was just about to say fonts. That's your thing. So
that is. I was like, oh, typography. So there was some good suggestions, but thank you, Arthur, for posting about fonts. It made my day. So I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed the suggestions, and that, some people actually link to a whole bunch of free fonts, which I'm not going to go look at right this second, but it's very tempting.
Yeah, but I guess with fonts, you have to be really careful, right, in making sure that they are actually free to use also. Because one thing I think, unless I'm mistaken here, you're the expert here, so correct me, Autumn, if I'm wrong. But I think sometimes you can actually find fonts that are free, but they're not free for commercial use. Right, so
correct.
I think you need to be careful here, right? That even though you find it free, you need to check that it's a commercial free font before you start using it for a book.
Yes. Sometimes it's free for personal use or free for, commercial use. Most of them come with a license, and you just need to read that really quickly and make sure it is actually free to use, like on a book cover, and go with that. Or if it's free to use on your book cover, but not free to use if you were making book covers to other people. It's lots of layers, and most people will answer them for you. And you can always go to, actually, my favorite font resource is called What the Font. So there is a fabulous forum. It's WTF. So there's a fabulous forum on What the Font, and people are font experts, and they'll answer questions, and they'll help you track down fonts, which I won't admit how many times I have done that. But they will help you figure out all that stuff. So if anyone has a question, I highly recommend What the Font as a very good resource. And plus, it's fun to get to say that to other people.
Although I really don't know how they would police if you're using a font that isn't allowed for commercial use, but if you, let's say, just you accidentally used it on your cover, I really don't know how they would police it. I don't imagine anybody sitting and going through all the covers on Amazon just to make sure. But of course, anyway, we need to make sure we're always compliant with licenses and whatnot. But I'm just wondering how they would actually figure it out.
I think it would be the random chance of someone finding it and questioning it and then asking to see your license. And because obviously you could possibly be using it legally because you paid for the license, which is usually what happens. So I can't imagine the challenge. I don't make fonts. I'd love to make a couple of fonts, but I can see the challenge for licensing that. I think I'd just do it for myself, or I'd just let it free for use. And yeah, I wouldn't want to go there.
No, and I mean, how many times has it happened that anybody approached you to ask for if you had the license for any of the fonts you're currently using? Right? Never. So, yeah. So I'm just wondering how that would all work. But yeah, who knows? I should also mention that as we're recording this episode, we just had the monthly Q&A where Patreon supporters at the $5 tier can get their questions answered. But there's loads more rewards for those who support the AmWritingFantasy Podcast on Patreon. So head on over and check that one out, if you please. And there is a link in the show notes. I was about to say, I guess that's right this time. Last time I called it the description field. But yeah, so check that one out. There is lots of good stuff over on Patreon.
And on to today's topic.
Yeah, so we thought it was very much on point to talk about holidays now that we are just the day before Christmas.
That's right.
So holidays is, I don't know, maybe some people find it a bit complicated, or they make it a bit complicated. But to be honest, I think that the process we use, Autumn, it's fairly simple.
I think so too. And I mean, obviously, I think there's some people who just immediately assume you're going to have all the same holidays that we have in this world, in your fantasy world. And if you're not writing on Earth or about Earth or Earthlings, I think you're pretty much free to come up with something new. And that to me is so much more fun. But yes, we've developed we've each done it on our own, and then we've developed a process together that I think makes sense and makes it easy. And it's always, to me, it's fun. It's a fun aspect of world building to be able to create a holiday.
Yeah, and the process that we've developed together here for how to do it, it's actually going to form part of the world building course. Yeah, that I was hesitating there because I was trying to think when I could say that that's going to be done, but I don't want to do that. Maybe sometimes in 2020.
Yeah, our goal, we've talked about a goal, and we would love to have it out this summer, or the summer of 2020. So fingers crossed and kick us in the butt, and that's still my goal. So we'll see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, I can't wait to get that course out. I truly think it's going to help a lot of authors with the world building, and it's of course going to be a full step-by-step course that's going to take you through everything you need from basically building a fantasy world from scratch. But we are going to talk much more about that once we have something concrete. But for now, at least, we just sort of plucked out one topic from that course, and that was about the holidays. So we could just talk you through how we do it, and it is actually rather simple. And I think where we start is by looking at the history of your world. So just like in the real world here, as Autumn said, usually our holidays are linked to something that happened in the past. Whether you believe in that happening or not is not really the point. But if you look at the history for your fantasy world, and then try to find some past event that people would be celebrating, then that's the starting point. And you just have a bit of siren there.
Yeah,
maybe that was maybe that's inspiration for a holiday or something.
Oh, it could definitely be a inspiration for a very dramatic event. I know I've read some really good holidays in short stories, especially science fiction, that were actually from huge, like not necessarily terrorism events, because I don't want to think about September 11th, but a big event. Like if we had celebrated the Hindenburg exploding and the aftermath of that, and there's things that mark big dramatic and tragic events, and then of course there's ones that mark maybe the birth of a mythical character. Or of course I like astronomy, so if you happen to have several moons and they come into conjunction with the sun, and suddenly you have this amazing eclipse, or like the changing of the times, like with the solstice that just happened on the 21st. I've always preferred the solstice and the equinoxes as big holidays, because I'm very scientific and they're very visual, and that works for me. I know when something happened, and that we're at that point of the year where we just went through the longest day, or the longest night, the shortest day, the darkest part of the year, and now every day is going to get lighter and brighter. That's so exciting for me. I can celebrate that one wholeheartedly. No religion necessary. So that's one of the fun things I think that we're trying to say here about holidays, is they don't have to be religious. Obviously, if you do have gods and you want to have some mythical events around their life and death or birth or something like that, you can have that sort of holiday. But it can just be the birth of a great hero.
It can, and it can also be like a past military event. Maybe it's celebrating the end of a war, or at some point a famous battle happened, and that's what people are celebrating. Or it could also be like purely scientific, like discovery items, or maybe they found a new land on at that date, and that's what they're celebrating. Or somebody figured out how to use magic on that date. That's also pretty important, I guess. discovery of an ancient race or artifact or something like that. I think that you can basically pick anything, but I think that the important thing when you're picking something is that it's somehow relevant, maybe as a backstory to the story that you're telling, so that it's within the confine of, or within the frame of the story, or that you're telling, that it's relevant in one way or another. I think that's the trick, to try to pick something like that, rather than something completely out on left field that doesn't really have any difference whatsoever.
So what do you mean, like, it fits the content of the story? Just so other people, like, do you mean it's because the character is at an event, like the festivity, and something happens, or that the event itself, like the historic battle that actually ended and caused this event, is also related to something hidden in some kind of subplot that's bubbling up under the surface, and that people are actually discontent, or this is actually taking place in the suppressed nation that lost, and they're kind of celebrating with their teeth gritted, saying, yeah, yay, we lost.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to. It can, of course, be so that the event is actually something in the story is going to take place at that event. It can, of course, be that. But what I actually meant by it was more like that it shows off parts of the world that is relevant for the story. So maybe as an example, so in our upcoming fantasy series, we have the mages have actually trapped a dark god in like a prison cell, and the problem is that this cell needs to be charged, because otherwise, if it's losing its power, then the dark god can escape. So
the batteries run out.
Yeah, exactly. Batteries running out, basically, more or less. Yeah. So what we then have is that we have once a year they need to recharge these batteries, and there is like an event around doing that. So it's like a holiday event where some soldiers are doing different activities in order to recharge those batteries. So it's not really directly related to what the protagonist is experiencing in the story, but it adds to explaining that, okay, there is a dark god imprisoned here, and they need to charge the cells, and apparently it's dangerous if the dark god gets out and all that. So it's a nice way to build in frame or world building elements without you having to go into actually, explaining what this is about. And by the way, within that tower there's a dark god and blah 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 blah. So by having it as a celebration, you can make it part of what is it's part of action, almost, that you're actually explaining parts of the background, or for example, also with the famous battles, if that's what you want to do, it could be in order to set up and explain to the reader that actually these two nations, where maybe the protagonist belongs to one of them, these two nations hate each other, and potentially some war is going to break out or something, because there was wars in the past, So it could be something like that, where you're sort of layering in world building that supports the story, but it doesn't have to be because it's directly related to the plot, but it's more like background information, that you get an excuse to deliver background information.
In other words, it's like a fantastic way of showing the reader something about the world instead of telling the reader about some backstory and past. It's a fantastic way of, avoiding the info dump, which we've talked about in a different podcast, and instead diving right into showing an action and, the reader or the characters actually living through the event, which is much more exciting than hearing about some piece of archaic history.
Exactly right, yeah. So I think, once you've decided on an event, then you need to ask yourself how important this holiday is. So we've sort of spec'd it out on 3 different levels. So either you can say that it's a major event that basically affects everyone in society. And if that's the case, you need to ask yourself, how long does this holiday last? Is it like days, or is it weeks of celebration, or what is it? And also, does it require any special form of preparation? Or you could say that it's a minor event that affects a considerable number of people in this society, but it does not require much preparation, and it isn't like a notable investment for people to basically celebrate. Or thirdly, the holiday could merely be something trivial that maybe only last a few hours, and most people don't even bother to participate. So that's sort of the next step to define how important is this to society.
I'm currently going for the Viking Yule Log that has to burn for 12 days, so you cut down an entire tree. That is what the holiday I'm going for right now. But I think I want to celebrate that 12 days off of work because it is my holiday.
Yeah,
go
sounds
argue
like
it.
a good excuse.
As long as I can take my laptop and sneak it in the corner, we'll be good. But, and I agree. I mean, the other options, yeah, you're right. So you can have something that maybe you just need to cook a special meal and go to the temple and leave it in front of your ancestors. Or, is it something where you basically need to sit down for 5 minutes and say a prayer, you mumble through it really quickly, no, you're done. Hey, let's get back to work.
Yeah, and basically the level of significance of the holiday is important because it allows you to determine, of course, both how widespread and common the holiday is, but also how time-consuming it is. Because if it is an important holiday that requires a lot of preparation, well, now it's the 23rd of December, right? So you've probably just been through all of it. It can be quite stressful to prepare for holidays, and you can put your character through the same, right? It's a good story trigger to maybe have some conflict between characters and while they're arguing about some preparation work for the holiday or what to wear or what it may be, right? So it can be a good trigger for a bit of conflict there.
For some reason, I'm visualizing the conflict between the one character who hasn't started their preparation yet and the one who is going, what the heck are you so, where are you going to get to? This should have been done by now. So that might be because I'm the slacker in my family. So hopefully by the 23rd when we're recording this, I'll be ready for the upcoming holidays.
Yeah, you'll never know.
Dear reader, dear listener, please check in and ask how I did.
Yeah, so once you get that far, then you decide on one element that will make this holiday stand out. So this could, of course, be like the type of clothing people wear. Maybe, well, we just talked about like a special contest that's sort of what we did with our upcoming fantasy world here. Or it could be, I don't know, ritual sayings, prayers. Maybe they eat something special.
That's what I was about to say, because I'm a foodie. So yes, a special dish that you have to prepare. Or, is there a procession? That's always an interesting one. That could be even play into not just a one day, but a multiple day. You have to go on a trek to reach this temple and it takes 3 days and you have to do this as you pass this thing and this as you pass. You don't want to get too cumbersome and detailed, but the more chance, if this is really a huge aspect and an important part of your story, there's a lot of issues here that you can pull out and make some tension and drama, especially if someone bumps over the, one temple they're supposed to be, worshiping at. That would be me too.
Yeah, I think that the key here is, and maybe this is the tripwire, basically, because the key is to try to find something that isn't boring, right? I mean, I mentioned clothing people wear, but if that's what you do, make it something very unique and awesome clothing. Something that's not like, then they put on a blue apron or whatever. It needs to be something. What you're going for is something that both fits within the context of the culture that the character belongs to, but also at the same time something that is remarkable and maybe will just make the reader go, wow, this is awesome, right? So you need to try hard a bit here to come up with something that is special in one way or another. I mean, a ritual saying, a prayer, that you can do that as well, but then try to figure out how can I make it something like, where the reader will say, okay, that's not a type of prayer I've seen before, because otherwise it's just boring. Yeah, people sing around the Christmas tree. It's just boring.
Yeah, you need something new, something much more exciting. And I mean, if you need inspiration, Google some archaic, some different celebrations from around the world, Mayan, Inca. Go look at some of the Native Americans and Polynesian islands and see what some of the costumes or the foods or what's going on there, because it's really inspiring to see how other native cultures have celebrated over the years, because it's really a lot of fun, and it may give you some ideas, because if you're going to spend the time to show this to readers, you really want to bring out something that kind of stands out, that makes you go, oh, this is important. Even if it's just, if it's a tiny little, 5-minute ceremony and you just mention it in passing, again, it should have an importance in the story, but make sure that there's something else going on there as well.
Yeah, so once you get to that stage, all there's left to do is to give the holiday a really cool name. And of course, if you create a name that for example, it could be maybe a name of a person or a place that the reader hasn't yet heard of, that could be a good way to add a bit of mystery to it and make the reader wonder what that might be about. But I think it's good to have a name that in some one way or another, I guess, raises a question in the reader's mind. That's a good name.
That makes sense, or at least makes them think that this is such an interesting, holiday. I've always liked the Candlemas, the holiday in Celtic is Umbaluk. And I hear that one, I'm like,
that
what
sounds cool.
is that? Exactly. It's like, wow, I don't know what it is, but I want to go celebrate it. Or, of course, one of my favorite actual holidays, and that's coming up tomorrow as you're listening to this, is Flood, which is the Icelandic tradition of reading a story on Christmas Eve. So, yeah, you can easily find some amazing holidays, but it's the ones that are fun to say and kind of go, what is that? That's kind of cool. You don't want to just make it something difficult to pronounce.
No, yeah, that was exactly what I was about to say. It's not fine with cool names, and because the same thing applies for when you're naming characters.
Absolutely,
it's fine with cool names, but it has to be something that you try to read it out aloud yourself. And if you're stumbling over the words, then it's no good. It has to sort of flow quite well.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with naming something like the Black Candlemas or something. If it works and fits whatever you're trying to evoke, that's fine. English is an acceptable language in writing.
Yeah, but the thing is just that sometimes words looks cool written, but then they are very difficult to pronounce. Or the reader might be in doubt on how you're supposed to pronounce it. And there's nothing worse in the reader actually stopping reading to start wondering, how am I going to pronounce this word, right? Then you just pulled them out of the story, so that you don't want that to happen.
No, it should all flow pretty smoothly, and you don't want them wondering. You want them maybe wondering a little bit about the history. They want to be curious about what's going on, not curious about how do you pronounce this and why the heck are you delving into this holiday and showing it to me. It better have an important aspect to the story. So those are the key points.
Yeah, I agree. And then, of course, with holidays, also think a bit wider in the sense that holidays are often shared across borders. So, for example, if you have, maybe two nations who are at war with each other, then maybe the holiday is the one time a year where they actually have a momentary peace between them for that week that the holiday takes place or something. But just be mindful at least that neighboring countries and maybe even further widespread within your world, holidays do cross borders. So that's important to think about at least.
Of course, that's what I've always loved, the stories of the Christmas Eve peace treaties that were made between front lines in the World War I and World War II. I think that's always a spectacular example of something that crosses boundaries and actually pauses a war. But of course, you can also have opposing holidays where if someone thinks another country that there's already a lot of friction, maybe they don't quite celebrate it on the same day or the same way. And so if you're trying to build some tension, you can actually create tension through the use of holidays in your story as well, so that, two people from opposing cultures are either arguing about the date or that, no, you can't use that spice, or no, that's not how you prepare that. So you can always have some fun if you need to add some arguments in there as well, because goodness knows if anyone was celebrating Thanksgiving and, family traditions don't necessarily work all that well when you're blending your family together.
It's always trouble, right?
In my world, there always seems to be trouble. I don't know why that is. I should start focusing on peaceful times, but no one's going to read that, right?
Yeah. But I guess, I mean, that's more or less it. So I hope and I guess that you can see that it does not have to be complicated or time consuming to create a holiday for your fantasy setting. I think that the main thing is that you find that hook that makes sense for the story you're telling and that fits with the world and the culture of the character. And that might take a bit to figure out what is best. But as I said up at the top, your world's history is a good starting point. So looking into that should probably give you inspiration of what to build. But it does not have to be complicated and time consuming.
No, and I will go back to that if you don't want to do the history and you have gods and you do have religions, and obviously with those you will probably be coming up with some sort of holiday, and that does give you a lot more leniency. Like I said, it could be a god's birth and other things like that, but don't forget you can foreshadow. You could have a holiday that they think in some future date something big is going to happen on this date, so everyone gathers together in kind of anticipation of this big event. So there's so many ways that you can bring a richness to your world and to your characters of events that are going to happen, and kind of tease out the nuances, and maybe it'll fit with your world and how you're building things. And it definitely, though, should somehow fit with your plot, and something big's going to happen there.
Yeah, so this was a bit of a lighthearted, like, world-building episode for you here just before Christmas. So hopefully you got a bit of inputs for your world-building and how to create holidays for your own setting here. And next Monday, I will be interviewing one of the biggest and most successful indie authors in the world, and that is Adam Croft.
I'm so excited about this one. Yes,
it's going to be awesome. And Adam will join the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast and talk about read-through and how it can revolutionize your book sales. So that's a holiday treat waiting for you next Monday.
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jesper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast going. Stay safe out there and see you next Monday.